a speaker that will be in Zoom, online. It worked earlier, so it should work now as well. Ça a marché précédemment, ça devrait marcher maintenant. This represents the European frame for artificial intelligence from the European Commission. We have a most distinguished speaker, being Juha Ekida. He will be addressing what has been done at the European level, which is obviously introducing what we will be doing later this afternoon. It might be easier this way. What we will be doing this afternoon to enhance the French-German position within Europe, and how within Europe we can be put in, and squeezed in between two giants, fantastic giants, leading the way. On one side, the USA, and we will have the CEO of the CS government, Don Hobson, speaking this afternoon, but also on the other side, the Chinese and Asian movements on artificial intelligence. Three different cultures, three different paradigms of AI and data management. So without any further ado, I just need to check that we have online Juha. Est-ce que c'est bon? On peut avoir la...
Oui, bonjour. Guten Tag.
Thank you. I hope you understood and you heard my introduction. It was very short, so if you don't mind to give your curriculum. And I can see you on the screen. That's fantastic.
Sorry, I did not hear. Can you repeat, please?
Yes, I was just asking if you could briefly provide us with your curriculum before getting into the European Commission. What was your career? The
right,
stage is
okay,
yours.
so thank you, merci. So I've been at the European Commission now since 1998. I've been dealing with robotics, AI, and cognitive systems since 2005, and I've been a head of unit in this area since 2014. And now, currently, I'm leading a unit which is called Robotics and Artificial Intelligence, Innovation and Excellence. Before that, I was involved earlier in my younger days. I was involved in computational and corpus linguistic research at the University of Helsinki, and I have a PhD in linguistics from the University of Cambridge.
Person along with us, and speaking about this European frame. Please, you can start your presentation. I believe you are sharing your PowerPoint presentation with us. That's correct? Can you share your screen?
Yes, I can do that, sir.
So, just to... Oui, mais il préfère présenter en anglais. So we have in the panel here on, you know, it's a phygital conference by which we have presence very well respecting the sanitary conditions to wear masks and to be spread. So we have roughly here 30 people, and we have almost 100 people online following through the presentation. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, so I was kind of thinking I would do this in French, but you just told me before we started that you would in fact prefer me to do it in English now. Is that correct?
It is in English, and if you're, you can speak in French and in English, regardless of, please switch to whatever language is good for you. I believe the audience is educated enough to understand.
Okay, I can do both. Okay, thanks. Okay, so let's start then. Thank you very much indeed for the invitation. Un grand merci pour l'invitation. C'est un grand plaisir pour moi d'être là pour présenter les développements récents en matière d'intelligence artificielle en Europe, dans l'Union européenne. Guten Tag, meine Damen und Herren. Es ist eine Freude. Vielen Dank für die Einladung. Ich bin hier sehr gern, um die spätesten Entwicklungen in diesem Bereich künstliche Intelligenz vorzutragen. So I shall then start by giving you a bit of background, un peu de motivation pour les mesures que l'Union européenne prend en la matière IA. artificial intelligence has many benefits for citizens, for business, and for the public interest. L'intelligence artificielle est une technologie puissante qui a beaucoup d'avantages à plusieurs égards pour les citoyens, pour l'activité économique et pour l'intérêt public. Mais il y a également un certain risque à la sécurité des consommateurs et des utilisateurs et des risques liés aux droits fondamentaux. So the fundamental risk, right risk and security risks, safety risks are the ones that are the most obvious ones in this context. So we have to take into account both the benefits and the disadvantages of this technology. In April, on the 21st of April, we published an AI package. On a publié un paquet IA en avril qui a été mis ensemble avec une communication chapeau, comme on les appelle. Cette communication donne la motivation pour nos mesures est composée de deux parties, effectivement. Il y a cette proposition du cadre juridique. Il y a également la révision du plan coordonné sur l'intelligence artificielle. So the proposal for regulatory framework and the revised coordinated plan are part of this package that was published in April. And we want to make sure in the European Commission that the European Union is a world-class AI hub, a world-class AI center, while ensuring at the same time that artificial intelligence is trustworthy. On veut être parmi les leaders de l'intelligence artificielle, mais il faut veiller à ce que l'intelligence artificielle soit et reste digne de confiance. We've had four main stages, quatre étapes in our strategy. We published the outline, the first strategy in April 2018. Then we published the first coordinated plan on artificial intelligence in December 2018, drafted together with the member states of the European Union. Then we had a communication on human-centric AI, which notably consisted of the ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI. And then just over a year ago, in February 2020, we published a white paper on AI, which outlined also this regulatory framework proposal that we have now put forward. So I shall first talk about the coordinated plan, its review. Donc, je vais d'abord parler du plan coordonné sur l'intelligence artificielle, la révision de ce plan coordonné qui a été publié d'abord en 2018, en décembre 2018. Ce plan consiste d'engagement entre la Commission européenne et des États membres pour effectivement tirer le profit de l'intelligence artificielle et avoir le potentiel de concurrence globale. The 2018 coordinated plan had some 70 actions to ensure that the European Union can benefit maximally from AI, but also to be able to compete globally. And it had actions which consisted of engagements by the member states, commitments by the member states, but also the Commission. And there was some 70 of them, including national AI plans by the member states. Now, this has been reviewed for a number of reasons. The pandemic, of course, being one of them, it has influenced all walks of life, and it will continue to do so. The Commission published its plan for the Green Deal, le pacte vert de l'Union européenne, qui a été publié. C'est un composant très important de la politique de l'Union européenne. And then the Recovery and Resilience Facility has been launched, was launched last year as a response to the pandemic. Donc la facilité de reprise et de la résilience a été publiée l'année dernière, effectivement, pour répondre aux défis de la pandémie. But we also wanted to make sure that we are aligned fully with the policy goals and the regulatory goals that were outlined in the 2020 white paper. There have also, of course, been technological developments in the meantime, and we have learned from the implementation of this plan. So these are all reasons why we needed to revise the 2018 plan with the member states. And again, we worked with the member states. We took input from the member states for this plan. The key here is that we want to go beyond intentions. We want to go towards action. So we want to ensure the EU leadership in trustworthy AI. And we summarize this in 3 verbs, if you like: accelerate, act, and align. So the necessary investment. Il faut veiller à ce qu'il y ait assez d'investissement dans l'intelligence artificielle, et ça se fait par le biais des programmes digital.
I'm sorry, I don't know if you can hear me, but we've lost you. It's coming back.
Qui est un problème de recherche et d'innovation, et puis bien sûr cette facilité de reprise et de résilience dont je viens de parler. So this Digital Europe program is a deployment and capacity building program. Horizon Europe is an research and innovation program. Financing programs by the European Union. But we also want to act on AI strategies and implement them fully to ensure that we fully benefit from the technology and its advantages. And there are specific actions and cooperation funding mechanisms to make sure. And then, of course, we want to align the policy with the Green Deal and other policies that have been introduced in the meantime. What are the main components of this coordinated plan? There are 4 main components. We want to set enabling conditions for AI development uptake in the EU. So we want to make sure that we share practice, policy insights, tap the potential of data, and that we have the necessary computing capacity. We want to make the EU the right place in order so that we have excellence all the way from the lab, the research labs, to the market. We want to make sure that these technologies work for people, and we want to build strategies in certain key sectors. Je ne vais pas parler de tout ça, mais je vais juste enlever peut-être quelques points ici qui sont importants. Je voudrais peut-être souligner le partenariat public-privé dans le domaine de l'intelligence artificielle, des données et de la robotique. Ça va être effectivement commencé dans plus ou moins 2 semaines. On va avoir ce partenariat important qui base aussi sur les partenariats qu'on a eu auparavant. We had a data partnership and a robotics partnership. We are now bringing them together and adding AI to it. And we also want to make sure that we have the research capacities. Il faut les compétences dans la matière de recherche. Donc, on a des réseaux d'excellence en matière d'IA. Et également, nous voulons avoir assez de talents, de compétences dans la matière. Ce que vous voyez sous Policy Framework to ensure trust in AI systems, ça c'est effectivement le cadre juridique. So Policy Framework is effectively the regulatory framework. Et puis certains secteurs stratégiques, il y a des mesures adaptées, spécifiques pour ces secteurs. Par exemple, la robotique, où on a une position de marché très forte, des compétences excellentes. Il faut agir là, il faut renforcer cette position. This coordinated plan, the revision, is a concrete set of actions by the European Commission and the member states. That there is a certain hierarchy. Some of the actions concern the European Commission. Some of the actions concern the European Commission and the member states. And then, of course, we have recommendations to the member states. So there is the Commission side, the joint activities, and then the member state side. And this also identifies the timeline for these activities. And there are some 40 key actions that are here and are put together. Then let me go on to the legal framework. Je présente maintenant les points les plus importants du cadre juridique proposé dans ce paquet d'avril. Why do we regulate AI use cases? So first of all, I would like to highlight that this is a proposal for a regulation which does not target the technology itself. It concerns certain uses of AI. So AI systems have certain characteristics: complexity, opacity, unpredictability, autonomy, and of course, the issues related to data. These can lead to certain safety risks, risks to fundamental rights, problems in terms of enforcing existing legislation, and legal uncertainty also as a result, mistrust, lack of trust in this technology, and fragmentation. So these specific characteristics of artificial intelligence can lead to these kinds of problems which we have to address. This proposal for a regulation, and I hasten to add it's a proposal, so this will be then discussed according to the political process by the European Parliament and the Member States, takes as a starting point of a neutral definition of AI in order for it to cover also techniques which are not necessarily yet known. So the idea here is to cover all AI, not just machine learning-based AI systems, which are the ones that we are currently talking about, but also traditional symbolic AI systems and hybrid AI systems, which are more and more common. And indeed, Annex 1 of this proposal for regulation lists AI techniques and approaches in order to provide certain legal certainty in this case. So the definition in English is a software that is developed with one or more of the techniques and approaches listed in the annex and can, for a given set of human-defined objectives, generate output such as content predictions, recommendations, or decisions influencing the environments they interact with. Ce pyramide est peut-être la chose la plus importante de la présentation. This pyramid is probably the most important, interesting thing here. Donc, il y a une hiérarchie de risques qu'on a définie. On a des risques qu'on ne peut pas accepter. Il y a des systèmes à haut risque. Et puis, il y a des systèmes qui ont moins de risques, où il y a certaines exigences, obligations. Et puis, il y a soit un risque minime ou pas du tout de risque. So, this risk-based approach defines this hierarchy of risks. And there are a number of relatively limited number of AI systems and uses of AI systems, which have been considered to be unacceptable and are therefore prohibited. Then the orange part of the pyramid, the second from the top, is the high-risk AI systems, which are permitted. These systems are permitted, but they are subject to compliance with certain requirements and an ex-ante conformity assessment. And then some AI systems which have less risk have specific transparency obligations. They are permitted, but they are subject to information and transparency obligations. And then there are no restrictions on AI systems which pose no risk. So there are certain AI systems where there are new transparency obligations. So, for example, it is necessary to notify humans interacting with AI systems that they are interacting with an AI system unless this is evident. They should notify humans that emotional recognition or biometric categorization systems are applied, and they should apply a label to deep fakes unless it's necessary for the exercise of fundamental right or freedom or for reasons of public interest. Then there are also voluntary codes of conduct for those which are effectively posing no risk. So there are no mandatory obligations, but there are voluntary codes of conduct which can be then adopted on a voluntary basis. So then let's look at the high-risk artificial systems. These are certain applications in the following fields. For example, safety components of regulated products, for example, medical devices or machinery, which are subject to third-party assessment under the relevant sectorial legislation. So it is important to understand that this proposed regulation takes into account existing regulation. So here we're talking about safety components in systems which are already regulated by existing legislation. Or they can be then another group of high-risk artificial intelligence systems are certain standalone AI systems in the following fields. And these are the biometric identification and categorization of natural persons, the management and operation of critical infrastructure, education and vocational training, employment and workers management, access to self-employment, access and to and enjoyment of essential private services and public services and benefits, law enforcement, migration, asylum and border control management, and administration of justice and democratic processes. CE marking is basically an indication that the product complies with the requirements of relevant union legislation regulating that particular product. Donc, ce marquage CE, c'est une indication que le produit respecte la législation en vigueur qui concerne effectivement ce type de produit dont on parle. And in order to be able to have the CE marking to add it to a high-risk system, the provider, le fournisseur, has to take the following steps. First of all, determine whether the system is a high-risk system under this regulation. Ensure that the development and quality management systems are in compliance with the regulation. Then carry out a conformity assessment procedure aimed at assessing and documenting compliance with the regulation. And then the CE marking can be attached to the system as a declaration of conformity, and then the system can be put on the market. So there is this assessment process which leads to the CE marking, and then that allows the product to be put on the market. What are the requirements then for high-risk systems? There have to be certain risk management processes established and implemented, taken into account the intended purpose of the AI system. And these concern the training, validation, and testing data, données d'entraînement, de validation et de test, the documentation and designing and design logging features, so traceability and auditability. And they have to ensure that a certain degree of transparency is available and provide users with information on how to use the system. There has to be human oversight. So the system has to have measures built in, or they can be implemented by users in such a way that they stay in control. And the systems must be robust, accurate, and they have to be meet cybersecurity standards. So, the operators, les fournisseurs, doivent établir un système de gestion de qualité. Il doit y avoir la documentation technique nécessaire qui doit être mise à jour également. There have to be logging obligations to ensure that users can monitor the operation of the high-risk AI system. They have to undergo conformity assessment and potentially reassessment if there are modifications to the system. The system has to be registered in an EU database, and the CE marking has to be affixed. And there have to be then, of course, post-market monitoring, and they have to collaborate with market surveillance authorities. So the providers have these obligations: the management, quality management system, technical documentation, logging obligations, conformity assessment, CE marking, and so on. And then the users, of course, have also obligations, which is, of course, to use the systems according to the instructions. And they have to ensure that human oversight is guaranteed, and they have to monitor the operation of possible risks and inform the provider about any serious incidents. And of course, existing legislation like the General Data Protection Regulation will continue to apply. So we have for these high-risk systems a life cycle approach. So the design has to be in line with requirements. We have the conformity, ex-ante conformity assessment that I just talked about. There's post-market monitoring, incident reporting, and if necessary, a new conformity assessment. So this regulation has this life cycle approach. Il y a également des interdictions concernant les systèmes qui ne respectent pas les valeurs de l'Union européenne. So systems which do not respect the values of the Union, they are planned to be prohibited according to this proposal for regulation. Subliminal manipulation resulting in physical and psychological harm, exploitation of children or mentally disabled persons, general purpose social scoring, and remote biometric identification for law enforcement purposes in publicly accessible spaces, with exceptions. So there are certain exceptions that cover these categories. As regards remote biometric identification, in particular, l'identification biométrique à distance, il y a certaines considérations supplémentaires encore. Il y a des exceptions en ce qui concerne l'utilisation de ces systèmes à des fins répressives dans certains cas. Par exemple, la recherche des victimes du crime, la menace de vie ou l'intégrité physique ou la menace du terrorisme et certains crimes sérieux. So these kinds of exceptions are made for law enforcement purposes, but they require an ex-ante authorization by a judicial authority or an independent administrative body. So these are the sort of law enforcement situations. And then remote biometric identification, putting them on the market. So we need ex-ante third-party conformity assessment, enhanced locking requirements, and the four eyes principle. Of course, existing data protection rules apply. Finally, I would just like to point out that there are also measures that support innovation. Regulatory sandboxes are provided for in the regulation. So this would be a possibility to test systems to see how they work in protected environments, to see how they perhaps challenge the legislation in forms. And there is support for SMEs and startups. So this wraps up my presentation with one more thing to say. There is a governance structure planned with an artificial intelligence board. Potentially also an expert group, although this is not in the regulation, but this is something that we are planning to do perhaps. And then of course at the national level, we have the national competent authorities. So this concludes my presentation. Thank you very much indeed. I hope this has been helpful and useful.
I believe. I understand that you might have to leave in a couple of minutes, but I'm getting bombarded by questions because this event is broadcasted worldwide in our CCE network, which encompasses 140 countries. So, and I have a couple of questions for you, and I will try to keep it in a very short time frame. First of all, thank you so much. Really, much appreciated, cumbersome and thoroughly approached explanations of the European process. And I see that you are in charge, obviously, of these innovation processes. Bravo, félicitations, c'est vraiment très enthousiasmant de voir comment vous avez pu détailler de manière très précise la démarche politique et structurée de la Commission européenne sur l'intelligence artificielle. So, a couple of questions. The very first one is, you mentioned the 4 key policies objectives within which critical computing capacity, foster critical computing capacity. Just before you, I'm not sure you managed to follow before, but we had a professor from another scientific approach mentioning artificial intelligence, quantum artificial intelligence. I know that Europe has a quantum computing approach with a budget, significant budget. How do you liaise between quantum computing and artificial intelligence quantum? Because definitely what was said earlier is that the random approach provides, fosters and provides faster results and more in-depth results. Donc vous avez mentionné 4 objectifs sur les politiques européennes qui sont principales, notamment une politique qui est un des 4 objectifs de faciliter l'usage de la capacité computationnelle, donc l'usage des ordinateurs. Et il a été précisé précédemment, notamment par le professeur Stéphane Jen, que l'intelligence artificielle pouvait être aussi quantique. Et donc je lui ai demandé comment on peut associer ces 2 démarches où la Commission européenne alloue des budgets très significatifs à la fois sur l'intelligence artificielle et sur le quantum computing. The floor is yours.
Right, thank you very much. So, indeed, this is an important question, and we are working on this, of course, to make sure that that we have the necessary computing capacity. So for AI, of course, so this was part of by the first part of the presentation, which refers to the coordinated plan, and one of the sort of stated, one of the 4 areas was indeed this enabling conditions, and computing was there. Of course, we have a number of things in the pipeline. I mean, the quantum aspects, that's a very important one, but we are also planning to facilitate the launch of an industrial alliance on microelectronics. We have also invested or will invest through a European partnership on key digital technologies in computing infrastructure. And also we are investing in research and innovation to develop low-power edge AI. So we see that edge AI, the computing on the edge, is actually a very important future development. And this is something where in fact we are very strong in the EU, and this will provide solutions which are very useful in terms of the future development of AI, because it is potentially more energy efficient. It will reduce the dependence on cloud providers, and of course, in this way, this is providing an alternative avenue, an alternative solution, if you like. Our high-performance computing capabilities are being developed. There is a joint undertaking in that regard, and this pools the resources of 32, if I remember correctly, participating countries. So not just the European Union member states, but also a few others. The coordinated plan, in fact, specifically encourages the member states to continue to develop national integrated large-scale data management and high-performance computing infrastructure to support research and innovation and skills development in AI. And we, of course, one of the things that we also plan to do is to have testing and experimentation facilities. One of them will be in edge computing. Others will be more sectorial, manufacturing, health, smart communities, and agri-food. So these are all the kinds of activities which will create the links necessary in order to be able to benefit also from the computing infrastructure and bring these different strands together. Thank you.
Well, listen, thank you so much to play the game, to answer in a very short time frame such a huge question, and you gave us a broad overview of the insights to follow the EU and the European Commission on the way we can move forward. But you mentioned two countries. Who are they? Which are these two countries that are not state members? Can you tell us?
No, 32 countries are part of this initiative. So 32 countries are taking part in this.
Okay.
I couldn't list them all. But
no. But outside of the 27 that we know, which are the remaining 5? Israel, by any chance?
I'm afraid
Egypt?
This is not my area, so I can't.
No worries. We will have the answer later on. We can ask the people to follow. So the last question, please, if I may.
But presumably, I would assume Norway, Switzerland, as usual, they take part in many activities that we have, plus a few others.
Okay, very last question, and let you go because I know you are in a rush, but I still have 2 remaining minutes. The question comes from Mark Essig, is our CCE responsible president for the European Commission. So we have also CCE, as Bruno mentioned earlier, based in the European Commission. And his question is in French, so I know that you don't mind, but I will be able to translate it. Quelles sont les limites et les contraintes mises par l'Union européenne sur l'intelligence artificielle et les systèmes de défense? What are the limits put by European Commission in using AI for defense systems?
So the defense is actually a national competence. So the European Union, it's the member states which are responsible for defense and defense decisions. This AI regulation is a regulation which targets certain uses of AI, and what we have discussed here, those are related to certain types of uses, biometric, etc., which are then banned. So this question is kind of outside, if you like, the remit of this.
That's a good way.
Of course, defense is a question where the member states have traditionally, of course, for understandable reasons, been very keen to keep their independence, and the EU has certain activities in terms of research and procurement, defense procurement, but that's kind of a completely separate topic as such. So in that sense, this does not really take a position in that regard at all.
Yes, but if I may, you're in charge of innovation processes. So when you say that it is the responsibility of the national countries, the state members of the EU, don't you think that in a foreseeable future, we could, and my friend, CEO of CS Las Vegas and CS Don Abson here, do you think that we could envisage in a foreseeable future a new governance of innovation dealing more specifically on domestic and national regulations, such as the defense, and at some point the European Union thinking that maybe we could accelerate, we could foster a differentiated innovation process? Because I'm sure you know all of them. You have done a PhD in one of the most prestigious business school and research center in the world. Innovation processes is something that you are digging very thoroughly. So in the next 5-10 years, do you think it could be possible to imagine?
So what you're doing now is you're asking a European Commission official a question which is related to predicting the future.
My apologies to you.
I think you will probably have already in your past noticed that bureaucrats are very, very reluctant to predict things which are beyond their control. So in my case, certainly I cannot predict that, and I think it would be inappropriate of me to do so either, and I think you will understand that. In the the research and innovation activities that we do in our research and innovation funding, which is very significant, by the way. So typically we often talk about the European Union lagging behind in terms of AI investment. In fact, as regards public investment in AI, the European Union is doing pretty well. In fact, the robotics research and innovation program that we had was the biggest civilian research program in robotics in the world for a while. It may have been overtaken now, but it was an envy also in the world. And in that sense, we are doing pretty well. But currently, the research and innovation funding is focused on civilian purposes. And it is specifically identified in the Horizon Europe, in the previous Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Program, and in the future Horizon Europe program. So we're talking about research and innovation in the civilian domain. I'm sorry that I cannot be tempted into entering into the speculation. I understand your interest.
No, was not. That's the purpose of my question, and I thank you to take the time to make sure that I didn't bother you or upset you or disregard the rules of conduct that you have to have as a European Commissioner. That's obviously, to me, my question was more on a model, if there is an existing model from whatever business school, paradigm or scientific research on new processes of innovations to deal with territories such as countries within a membership of 27 countries such as the European Commission. So it's just on the model by itself, if any existing. But we will discuss that maybe in the future, and we will invite you maybe in Las Vegas to attend one of our CES government events. I don't want to take too much of your time because you said that you wanted to leave. We might have a question in the floor because we have here very distinguished people from different organizations. You need to go right now. Let me know.
Well, one more maximum. Then if I can take one more, but then I really...
Okay, any question on the floor?
I have a next,
Anyone on the floor? Anybody on the quantum computing? He doesn't have a question. I have, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have a question, just a compliment to the EU for what they do in research.
If I may, introduce yourself, please. Introduce.
My name is Stefan Jen.
Get off your mask. We can't understand what you say.
My name is Stefan Jen. I'm the founder of a company that's conducting therapeutic research, and we are not developing AI, but using AIs for various researches in chemistry or structural biology or screening techniques we use. And as I said, I don't have a question, just a compliment to what the EU is doing in funding research globally and allowing networks to be created throughout Europe, which we have used a lot over the 20 years of our firm. Thank you.
Really, a round of applause for your distinguished presence. Definitely outstanding topic that you treated very thoroughly. May I suggest the audience to play a round of applause.
Thank you very much indeed. Un grand merci. C'était un plaisir. Vielen, vielen Dank. Es hat mich gefreut. Und ich wünsche Ihnen noch einen schönen Tag in dieser Konferenz. Je vous souhaite encore une très belle conférence pour le reste de la journée. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Vielen Dank. Auf Wiedersehen. Au revoir.
Merci beaucoup de votre contribution. À bientôt. Nous en avons terminé avec la première partie du programme. We finished the first part of the program of the day. A great kick-off, believe me, because that will bring us the springboards for this afternoon speakers. We have a short break. We will be starting again and having other people joining us also. We will be starting at 1:30. Thank you again. Congratulations to the organizer of the first round table. And obviously the commissioner that we had today joining us and the second round table. Thank you. Cheers. Merci.